Well, the Hispanic and Latino population is extremely diverse. The terms Hispanic and Latino are rooted more so in shared cultures rather than racial categories. And one way to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month is simply by recognizing the diverse cultures and heritage often left unseen.
You don't have to look a certain way, be a certain way, have a certain height, have a certain color.
Kandace, what is the state of college faculty diversity right now?
Well, Alex, good evening to you. Well, the latest government statistics show that white people make up the majority of faculty in higher education. Again, that's nationwide, and Hispanic faculty are one of the most underrepresented groups. But a university in our own backyard, Sacramento State, is working to change that.
What was it like to attend a Mexican school?
The Race and Culture team is getting answers from the community and local nonprofit organizations about the importance of authentic representation and going beyond the headlines and news. Take a listen.
The value that we've brought to this country and how we have helped build this country. Let's share those stories.
Out of the masses of people leaving Ukraine, dozens come from other countries. Now we're talking about migrant workers and students. Some of them, particularly those of African descent, have encountered challenges with Ukrainian border authorities.
As long as you're black, no one likes you.
As hundreds of thousands of people flee Ukraine from Russia's invasion, some immigrants and students of African descent say they're stuck at the border due to racism and discrimination. So I talked with Jonathan Burgess, who spoke at the last hearing, and he shared his thoughts with me about one of the big questions that needs to be answered before a recommendation can be made.
It'd be constitutional and illegal to base reparations based on race and would further divide our country. If we want to rid the world of racism, we do it by education, not by paying everybody a check for being black.
Kandace, you talked to community members about their views on trusting the police.
That's right. You know what? Once again, on this day 4 years ago, police shot and killed Stephon Clark, only 22 years old, a father. Well, again, police are still working on building trust with our communities. So during today's rally, we set out to ask you, do you trust law enforcement?
I trust law enforcement to a certain degree.
A parent reported a racist Instagram post to staff at John Knight Middle School. I want to be intentional and talk about how this is truly impacting Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, AAPI communities. Health experts, they're reminding people you don't have to do it alone. You do not have to cope by yourself.
Ready?
In a plaza on Florin Road in South Sacramento, the Black entrepreneurial spirit is alive. A timeline of Black history is painted on the walls, and businesses successfully map out their own future. This is the Florin Square Shopping Center. Thomas Donaldson purchased this building in 2003. He came to California from Pennsylvania with a dream.
Dear Lord, I want to come to California and I want to be a machinist. My first profession was simply as a manufacturing engineer. I love to build things. And then just so happens I got into real estate.
Years later, Donaldson moved to Sacramento to serve a cause greater than himself. Now he mentors other Black entrepreneurs at Florin Square.
Going into business is one thing. Being successful and prosperous at that venture is totally different.
Especially for Black entrepreneurs, they disproportionately lack funding, access to social networks, and face other systemic barriers to success.
And many people have the desires, the aspirations to go in business for themselves, but they lack a physical place to set up. So my thought was very simple. If I provide a clean, safe environment for people to fulfill their dreams, it's a win-win situation.
But Donaldson needed help.
I realized what this building needs is a full-time marketing person. And when Aaron walked in, I knew there was an answer to my prayers, period.
Aaron Boyce, who's from Brooklyn, New York, moved to California for a better life just like Donaldson. For Boyce, the journey to success ain't been no crystal stair. He describes his past as
single mom, child of welfare, and I've been stuttering since I was 9. So, I mean, I had issues as a kid, but I was able to rise above those issues. Mom always told me that, you know, whatever you want to do, do it, you know? And so I did.
With Donaldson's mentorship and Boyce's connections, the shopping plaza grew to more than 200 businesses, retail stores, and nonprofits, 90% Black-owned. Donaldson says the center operates like a mall, encouraging shoppers to buy Black.
If the dollar does not stay in the community dies.
Now, Florence Square is Sacramento's Black Wall Street, a living descendant of one of the most prosperous Black communities in the U.S., the Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
We didn't call ourselves St. Mel's Black Wall Street. Other people did. That is a huge sense of pride.
Black Wall Streets emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries in the U.S.
Our history is something that we have to understand.
Hannibal Johnson is an educator who's written extensively about the creation of the Greenwood District in 1906 and its influence on the Black entrepreneurial spirit.
This was a concentration of small businesses, of entrepreneurs, of mom and pop type operations.
Like other communities across the country, Greenwood was born in the shadow of slavery and fueled by legalized racial segregation and overt racism.
The communities, the Black community, the white community, were literally separated by the Frisco tracks, the railroad tracks. And so Black folks lived north of the tracks, created their own community, which included an economy on Black Wall Street or in the Greenwood District. White folks were jealous of the relative success of Black folks across the tracks. And you can see Black millionaires, Black people wearing nice clothes, Black people living in fancy homes, Black people driving cars.
They only needed a reason, and they found their excuse to burn it all down.
The Greenwood District changed forever in 1921. On May 30th, a Black teenager named Dick Rowland got on an elevator. A white teenager named Sarah Page was the elevator operator. Historians say Rowland may have accidentally stepped on Page's foot, or he probably tripped and bumped into her. Page screamed. The next morning, police arrested Rowland. The Tulsa Tribune published an inflammatory report inciting violence.
The story was entitled "Nab Negro for Attacking Girl in an Elevator." It was essentially a call to action and a call to arms to the white community.
A group of Black men went to the courthouse to protect Rowland from a large white mob and possible lynching.
A white man tried to take a gun that one of the Black men was holding. The gun discharged, and in the words of one of the survivors of the massacre, all hell broke loose after that.
Thousands of armed white rioters invaded Greenwood. They murdered Black people, looted businesses, and left 35 city blocks in charred ruins. The Tulsa Race Massacre began May 31st and ended June 1st. Historians believe as many as 300 people may have died, most of them Black people, making it the deadliest race-based massacre in the nation's history. Not one of the white perpetrators were ever arrested or convicted of a crime.
When I think of Greenwood, what really hurts me more than anything is the fact that the people who built it from a dream.
Despite structural racism, white supremacy, and hate, the spirit of Greenwood's Black Wall Street remains unbreakable, then and now.
We're looking for vendors that want to make Second Saturday their home.
I think we are a microcosm of that Wall Street because there was a spirit there that grew.
And that growing spirit continues to provide a sense of hope and great strength for today's Black entrepreneurs, those still working to rise above challenges.
We want this building to still be a beacon of success collaboration, networking, and family for all to come.
South Sacramento is not a place to be afraid of. It's a place where people who live here understand that we can thrive, and we are thriving, and we will build and make things better.
For Rola Noa Lagi Lagi, rugby is life.
Rugby back home in Fiji, it's next to God, so rugby is like the national sport.
Lagi Lagi says she grew up watching rugby faithfully with her family in Fiji as part of her culture.
Back home when we're watching the national team play, I was like, oh, I want to be just like them.
And now she is. Lagi Lagi plays rugby for the Sacramento Amazons.
I'm really grateful to be a part of this team.
Safesi Green founded the Amazons in 2001, making it the first all-female high school Polynesian rugby team in America. The first players were daughters of Tongan immigrants.
I wanted to play with mostly a Pacific Islander team, people who look like me, like in the Tongan and the Melanesian Pacific Islander, the Asian American.
It is a Polynesian-based club, but it is open to everyone and anyone.
Wayne Coy, who's from Fiji, is the Amazons' head coach and says rugby changes lives, especially for Pacific Islanders.
In Fiji, rugby is huge. It's really huge, and it gives an opportunity not only just in Fiji, but in other neighboring islands, to Tonga, Samoa, opportunities for them to get contracts to go play overseas.
The Amazons earn once-in-a-lifetime chances, too.
We have 6 seniors on the team. Out of those 6, 5 of them have got scholarships to go play rugby in the collegiate level. That wouldn't have happened if we didn't have this program. I think overall it's just to build you on and off the field as a person.
It gave me that courage to be like, you know, if I can do all this, then I can do basically anything.
Afea Yupu man, who's half Tongan and Samoan, says playing rugby for the Amazons is empowering.
I was able to show my grandma and my aunties, like, hey, this is not just a guy's sport. Like, look at me, I'm fine, and I've been playing as long as I've been playing, and it's really fun. When you're out there putting in the work and, you know, doing stuff that sometimes you're not comfortable with or sometimes that's new to you, and like you have girls supporting you and girls doing it with you, you know, it's sort of like it creates that bond, like, okay, like we got each other on and off the field.
Never underestimate yourself and always put yourself, like set yourself a standard, but go above and beyond that. It's really important to just never hold yourself back.
I know the Lord will make a way for me.
For Izzy Cutmore, every day's a fight.
We have to keep fighting to be validated. We have to keep fighting to be seen as a person.
Cutmore grew up in Fairfield in Salona County. There, he made a big decision.
All I know is I didn't want to lose my family. I didn't want nobody to hate me.
While in high school, he came out as a gay person.
The first thing my grandma told me was, I love you. And then also in the same night too, I told her that I want to do drag and I want to be a drag queen. And her first words with that was, we got to buy you your first costume.
Eventually, the drag queen Rose Rosé was born.
For Rose, her home is Sacramento. This is where she started working. This is where she got her name out.
Through drag, Rose fights for her rights and others in LGBTQ+ communities.
No hate crime, no hate group, no anything can take away the love that I have for my art form, the love that I have for my community. Nothing will ever take that away from me. So that's what keeps me going.
According to the nonprofit GLAAD, there's been 161 protests and threats targeting LGBTQ people and drag events nationwide since early 2022. There's also been a record number of bills introduced in state legislatures that attack the rights of LGBT people across the country this year. The American Civil Liberties Union is tracking 491 bills, with 75 becoming law so far.
So drag is a safe space for LGBTQ folks in our community.
Dr. Lady J, also known as Jay Davenport, is a drag performer and drag historian from East Tennessee. She explains the roots of drag and how the art form continues to overcome hate.
It comes from an underground culture that starts with enslaved folks who are performing their own cross-dressed acts for one another and for community purposes. That is then mimicked and mocked by minstrelsy.
Born into slavery in 1860, William Dorsey Swann was the first queen of drag and queer activist.
Queen of drag was really an idea about who William Dorsey Swann was in his community, really. So the idea that he was a queen was a leader. So he was someone who had a house where he had many other people that did drag, largely formerly enslaved folks just like himself.
Swann hosted drag parties at his home in Washington, D.C.
Those house balls, essentially these house parties, were raided, and he was put in jail. What they would put them in jail for was, quote, running a disorderly house, which is the same thing you'd say about a brothel, even though this is not what was happening at William Dorsey Swann's parties.
Swann filed for a pardon from President Grover Cleveland in 1896, which was denied. Swann was the first known American to take legal action in the fight for gay rights.
People who are doing drag, and especially Black folks who were formerly enslaved folks, are really the folks who are responsible for beginning the movement. Nothing has ever stopped us. Nothing ever will stop us. We are going to be who we are.
What's important about drag for me is what I can do with it.
What about us? What about us?
For 20 years, Taryn has been a drag performer.
I want to see people laugh. I want to see them smile. I want to perform and change their mood. I want to make them cry through a performance.
At night, Taryn performs at bars and clubs in the greater Sacramento region. For her, it's about community.
One of my favorite ballads to do is Whitney Houston, I Have Nothing.
In the day, Taryn turns Jonathan Cameron, who works with Sunburst Projects. It's a nonprofit that serves the needs of the HIV and AIDS community through compassionate care and services.
When I started doing drag, I found out I was positive, HIV positive. And drag allowed me to focus on what I can do to help educate and to help spread the word about HIV.
Outside of raising awareness, Taryn says she also uses drag to combat hate against LGBTQ+ people.
And so at some point you have to just realize, if they're not hurting you, why are you hurting them? We're a community that's different, we're diverse, and we as a community, and even the surrounding areas, should be proud of who we are.